The state of California is set to do something monumental by building a billion-dollar reservoir called the Sites Reservoir. This project, once completed, will redefine how water supply issues in the state are handled. But what exactly is the Sites Reservoir, and what would it mean to the people of California in the long run? Well, there's only one way to find out. The Sites Reservoir is an ambitious off-stream water storage project that is currently being built in the Northern California region. It's located about 81 miles northwest of Sacramento, right in the middle of the towns of Colusa and Maxwell. But unlike most reservoirs of the world, the Sites Reservoir will not dam any major river. Rather, the reservoir is designed to collect and store water excesses that have been diverted from the Sacramento River in times of large overflows of water. Being an off-stream reservoir, it significantly reduces disruption to existing waterways, and at the same time, maximizes water storage in cases of large snowmelts or heavy rains. Once the project is completed, this reservoir will become the 8th largest reservoir in the state of California, as it will be able to hold a staggering 1.5 million acre-feet of water. According to projections, this volume will be more than enough to supply water to as many as 7.5 million people annually. One of the major reasons for building the Sites Reservoir is California's long-standing problem of water shortages. These shortages are mainly caused by climate change, droughts, and an ever-increasing population. California's agricultural sector is one of the biggest on Earth, and this makes abundant water supply a necessity. More so, rural towns and cities within the state also need a constant and reliable supply of water. Considering the recent droughts in the state, the need for a reliable water storage facility has become more important than ever. The completion of the Sites Reservoir will serve as a crucial piece of infrastructure that can solve this problem, as it'll help store large volumes of water in times of drought. Governor Gavin Newsom has stated that the construction of the reservoir is a major step towards building climate resilience, and that the state's ability to collect and hold water is important for battling future climate impacts. The Sites Reservoir is expected to increase California's water storage system capacity by as much as 15%, and this will be crucial to the state's future. The size of the Sites Reservoir is quite applaudable, as it will span a whole 13 miles from north to south and 4 miles from east to west. But it isn't just its length that's amazing, because at its deepest point, the reservoir will be up to 260 feet deep. As I've already mentioned, the storage capacity of this reservoir will be 1.5 million acre-feet of water. But just so you get a clearer picture of how gigantic that is, 1 acre-foot of water is enough to cover an entire football field, and is more than enough to supply a family of 5 for a whole year. As for infrastructure, the project doesn't stop at the reservoir alone, as it'll also feature several pipelines and canals that will move water from the Sacramento River into the reservoir during overflows. With these features in place, inflow and outflow of water can be carefully managed. This not only guarantees that the reservoir will be filled up when there's excess water, but will also ensure that water can be released when needed. Building the Sites Reservoir is not an easy task, and it's estimated to cost around $4.5 billion. As for funding, that burden is shared by a combination of state and federal sources, as well as private investors and local water agencies. It's important to know that one of the major players in the project's funding is the California voters. They approved Proposition 1 in 2014, and this set things underway for several water storage projects, including the Sites Reservoir. The federal government is also a major player in this project, being that the Bureau of Reclamation is a major partner. They provided not only part of the funds, but also the expertise needed to execute such a project. As for the local water agencies in the state, they too are contributing significant sums of money to the project. Among these agencies are municipal water districts, agricultural districts, and some environmental organizations that share the vision of having a reservoir that can balance environmental protection with water supply. The Sites Reservoir has many potential benefits, but just like any major project, it too has faced its fair share of challenges. One of such challenges is working around California's complex environmental regulations, specifically the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA for short, which demands a thorough review of the project's future impact on the environment. As you would expect, several environmental protection bodies have also expressed fear over the possible impact of diverting water from the Sacramento River. This has led to several lawsuits, one of which came in 2023, when a coalition of environmental bodies filed a legal challenge which argued that the project could harm marine population, especially endangered species like the Chinook salmon. But that's not all, as securing the required approvals and permits from federal agencies have also proven to be tough. With this in mind, the Sites Reservoir project must meet all requirements for marine population protection, water quality, and land use. These processes are time-consuming, and for this reason, the project, which has already been ongoing for more than a decade, is expected to be completed in 2030. The Sites Reservoir has also faced a lot of criticism from several parties. On one hand, environmentalists have been outspoken about the project's potential negative impact on California's fishery, especially in the Sacramento River. The Chinook salmon, which is already an endangered species, depends heavily on the natural flow of rivers for their life cycle. According to these groups, altering this flow can disrupt their spawning and migration patterns. Of course, the project aims to divert water only when flows are high, but environmental groups still argue that it could lead to reduced availability of water during critical periods of marine life. But it isn't just the fish population in the Sacramento River that environmentalists are worried about. For those who don't know, the Sacramento River feeds into the Francisco Bay Delta, which is one of the most important estuarine ecosystems in the state. For environmental groups, they argue that reducing the river's flow by such a significant amount can have a negative impact on this delta. The delta serves as a habitat for hundreds of birds, fish, and other wildlife, and diverting water away from this region could be very harmful to the species that need it the most. To add to that, a significant reduction in freshwater inflows might also have a negative impact on the quality of water in the region. Concerns about water quality mainly stem from increased salinity, which can also hurt not just wildlife, but agricultural products as well. Now, it isn't just environmentalists that are kicking against the billion-dollar Sites Reservoir project, as economic experts are also skeptical of such an endeavor. Many argue that the problem with California's lack of water isn't a lack of adequate water storage. Rather, it's because of inefficient distribution and wasteful usage of water. For instance, California's agricultural sector alone consumes a large portion of the state's water, most of which is used to grow water-dependent crops. Among these crops are almonds in the arid regions. Critics who argue from an economic point of view are of the opinion that improving water efficiency in agriculture and overall distribution can cut down the need for massive infrastructure projects such as the Sites Reservoir. Some of these critics have also raised concerns about whether all residents of California will benefit from the project equally. Some argue that the project is mainly designed to benefit only those with large agricultural interests in the Central Valley. They also suggest that urban water users who have been faced with strict water usage restrictions during periods of drought will not benefit as much from the reservoir. Hence, they strongly insist that the $4.5 billion being dedicated to the Sites Reservoir project isn't the best use of state funds. Speaking of the huge sum of money involved in this project, critics argue that the $4.5 billion being set aside for the project can be used to explore other alternative water solutions. Water recycling, use of desalination plants, and better conservation methods are among the options being proposed by critics. Some have strongly suggested that these alternative options can potentially offer a more reliable long-term solution to water supply without the risks involved in building a large infrastructure like the Sites Reservoir. Now, the challenges faced by the Sites Reservoir project don't end with environmental and economic critics, as it's currently dealing with several construction hurdles. This is expected of a major project such as this, as logistical challenges are also worth considering. We've already discussed how complying with the CEQA requirements have caused problems, including lawsuits and criticisms from environmental groups. Yet this is not where it ends, as there's also the issue of location to consider. The Sites Reservoir is being built in a remote area, which makes it difficult to move building materials to the construction site. Lack of roads, the Sacramento River, as well as other geographical elements have significantly slowed down the project. This has necessitated the construction of supporting infrastructure such as new roads and extra utilities, which are crucial to help transport construction workers and large equipment through these rural areas with less stress. Of course, building new roads takes a significant amount of time, but it's something that must be done if construction is to proceed smoothly and avoid further delays. The Sites Reservoir project has been ongoing for over a decade, and considering the many challenges it has faced, supporters of the project are concerned about meeting the 2030 completion date. These concerns are well-founded, as the project was initially set to be completed sometime in the mid-2020s. However, that is no longer a realistic target. For now, though, those in charge of the project are optimistic that the 2030 target will be met, although who knows what other challenges might spring up between now and then. Critics who argue from an economic point of view are still kicking against the project, and environmental protection organizations are still filing more lawsuits. So even with all the optimism, there is still a great chance that the Sites Reservoir will be delayed even further. The budget is another thing worth considering. If the project drags on longer than planned, it is possible that the budget will be increased. Of course, this will not sit well with those who have insisted that the $4.5 billion set aside for the project could have been used to explore cheaper water storage alternatives. If it is required to pump in more money to the project, then it's expected that there will be more resistance from critics, which will in turn cause further delays to the project. The good news for proponents of the Sites Reservoir project is that even with all the criticism faced, the project undoubtedly has realistic benefits. We've already mentioned how the reservoir will be able to hold as much as 1.5 million acre-feet of water, which is enough to cater to 7.5 million Californians per year. But that's not where it stops, as the reservoir can also help protect the environment in several ways. For instance, having a dependable reservoir of water during the dry years will reduce the need for emergency water diversions from surrounding lakes and rivers. This means that with the Sites Reservoir, there will be no need to tamper with the natural habitat of marine life in the first place. More so, the unique off-stream design of the site's reservoir also means that there won't be any river blockage. As for its economic benefits, the site's reservoir can help stabilize water supplies for California's agricultural sector, which is a major part of the state's economy. By providing a water reservoir as large as this, then California's food manufacturing sector will not be harmed when there is a long period of drought. California's Sites Reservoir stands as one of the largest and most audacious water projects in the history of the state. As the region continues to battle the ongoing climate change, droughts, and the ever-increasing population, the need for such a large reservoir becomes more pressing. It's true that some of the critics' concerns are well-founded, but with the potential to store enough water to supply millions of residents in critical times, the site's reservoir remains a project that promises to be more beneficial than harmful. It can save not only lives, but can also help sustain the state's agricultural sector in times of long droughts. Now, head over to the comments and tell us if you think the $4.5 billion being spent on the site's reservoir is a worthy investment or not. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more insightful megastructure content. See you in the next one.